I'm Caitlin, 29 years old, and I never thought I'd wake up bald the day before my sister's wedding. My fingers trembled as they touched my scalp, finding patches where my long blonde hair used to be. Clumps of it lay scattered across my bedroom floor like golden casualties. In the doorway stood my mother, scissors in hand, a satisfied smile playing on her lips. Emma's wedding was tomorrow, and my own family had betrayed me in the worst way. Before I continue my story, let me know where you're watching from and subscribe to follow my journey from victim to victor in the face of unimaginable family betrayal. To understand why my parents would do something so horrible, you need to know our family history. Growing up in suburban Chicago, I was always the pretty one, while my sister Emma was the smart one. Not by my choice. These were labels our parents assigned us from an early age. The truth is, I worked incredibly hard in school, maintained a 4.0 GPA through college, and eventually landed a great marketing job. But in my parents' eyes, especially my mother's, Emma's accomplishments always outshined mine. Our home looked perfect from the outside, a 4-bedroom colonial with a manicured lawn and a white picket fence. My father, Scott, worked as a financial advisor while my mother, Diane, ran a successful interior design business. We had family dinners every night and took annual vacations to Florida. The picture-perfect American family. Except behind closed doors, the dynamic was toxic. Emma got another A on her science project, my mother would announce at dinner. Then turn to me with a critical eye. Caitlin, maybe you could ask your sister for help with your homework instead of spending so much time on your hair. I remember once winning a poetry contest in high school. When I came home excitedly clutching my certificate, my father barely looked up from his newspaper. That's nice, honey. Did you hear Emma got accepted to that summer program at Yale? The pattern continued throughout our lives. When I graduated college with honors, my mother commented on how lucky I was that my pretty face had gotten me through. When I landed my first professional job, my father suggested my boss probably hired me for the office view. These painful barbs became so normal that I learned to swallow my accomplishments rather than share them with my family. Emma wasn't innocent in this dynamic either. Growing up, she'd throw tantrums if I received any attention. When we were teenagers, she once destroyed my prom dress the night before the dance because she overheard someone say I would probably be voted prom queen. She apologized tearfully afterward. And I forgave her because that's what sisters do. But the pattern continued into adulthood. When I was promoted at work last year, Emma didn't speak to me for 2 weeks. When I bought my first car, a modest used Honda that I saved for, she complained to our parents that I was showing off. It was exhausting trying to dim my light just to keep peace in the family. Things got dramatically worse when Emma met Jackson, her now husband. He came from old money, worked at a prestigious law firm, and checked all the boxes my parents had for a suitable match. From the moment they started dating, Emma became even more competitive with me. If I wore a dress to Sunday dinner, she'd make a comment about how I was always trying to steal attention. If I mentioned a work accomplishment, she'd immediately change the subject to her and Jackson's plans. When they got engaged after just 6 months of dating, my parents were ecstatic. The wedding planning immediately became the center of our family universe. Every conversation, every family gathering, every holiday was about Emma's wedding. I tried to be supportive, offering to help with invitations, joining her for cake tastings, even using my design skills to create custom thank you cards. But nothing I did was enough. "You're just doing this to outshine me," Emma accused when I showed her the beautiful cards I'd designed. "You know you're better at this artsy stuff than I am." Despite the tension, I genuinely wanted to repair our relationship. When Emma asked me to be a bridesmaid, clearly under pressure from our extended family, who would have noticed my absence, I accepted with hope that this might be a turning point for us. "Just don't try to stand out," she warned after asking me. "This is my day." Little did I know how far my family would go to ensure I didn't stand out at my sister's wedding. The 6 months leading up to Emma's wedding were a masterclass in family dysfunction. As a bridesmaid, I was expected to attend every pre-wedding event with enthusiasm while simultaneously making myself as invisible as possible. The engagement party set the tone. I wore a simple black dress, minimal makeup, and pulled my hair back into a conservative bun. I stayed in the background, helped serve drinks, and made sure Emma always had what she needed. Despite my efforts, I overheard my mother and Aunt Judith in the kitchen. "Caitlin is trying to behave, but you know how men always look at her," my mother sighed. "Emma deserves one day where she's the center of attention. Maybe suggest Caitlin wear something less flattering for the wedding," Aunt Judith offered. "Or have her do a reading so she's sitting at the front with her back to everyone." I pretended not to hear and kept arranging desserts on platters, swallowing the hurt. The bridal shower was even worse. Emma's future mother-in-law, Catherine, a kind woman who didn't participate in the family dynamics, complimented my homemade decorations. "You have such a natural eye for beauty, Caitlin," she said warmly. "These arrangements are stunning." Later, I found Emma crying in the bathroom. "You just couldn't help yourself, could you?" she sobbed. "You had to make sure everyone noticed your special touch on my bridal shower." "Emma, I was just trying to make your day special," I replied, exhausted by the endless eggshells I walked on. "Well, stop trying so hard. Everyone's talking about your decorations instead of my gifts." This pattern repeated at every event. At the bachelorette party, Emma accused me of flirting with the bartender, who was clearly just being friendly to everyone. At the dress fittings, she demanded I choose a bridesmaid dress a size too large so I would look dumpy. I complied, wanting peace more than pride. The rehearsal dinner was the breaking point. I wore a modest navy dress, flat shoes, and minimal makeup. I sat quietly at the far end of the table and only spoke when spoken to. But Emma's fiancé Jackson's brother, Mark, kept engaging me in conversation. He was the best man and seated beside me. "You and Emma look nothing alike," he observed. "You're both beautiful, but in completely different ways." "Thank you," I replied quietly. "Emma's the real beauty of the family." "That's not what I see," he said kindly. "You have this natural glow about you. And your hair is amazing. I've never seen that shade of blonde outside of a magazine." I didn't realize my mother had overheard this exchange until I saw her whispering furiously to Emma, both of them staring daggers at me from across the table. Emma excused herself shortly after, and I found her having a complete meltdown in the restaurant's bathroom. "You're ruining everything," she screamed, mascara streaming down her face. "Mark hasn't stopped looking at you all night. Jackson's whole family is probably wondering why he didn't pick you instead." "Emma, that's ridiculous," I tried to reason with her. "Mark was just being polite. Everyone here is celebrating you and Jackson." "Then why did his mother ask if we were both models? She said we had the same cheekbones." Emma sobbed. "You always do this. You always steal my spotlight." I spent the next hour calming her down, reapplying her makeup, and assuring her she was the most beautiful bride-to-be in the world. By the time we returned to the table, I was emotionally drained, but hopeful we'd moved past the crisis. That night, after returning to my parents' house where I was staying for the wedding weekend, I made a special effort to connect with Emma. I knocked on her childhood bedroom door with a peace offering of her favorite tea. "Can we talk?" I asked gently. Surprisingly, she let me in. We sat on her bed like we used to as teenagers. And for a brief moment, I saw vulnerability instead of jealousy in her eyes. "I'm nervous about tomorrow," she admitted. "What if I'm not good enough for Jackson?" "Emma, he adores you," I said sincerely. "Anyone can see that. You're going to be a beautiful bride and have an amazing life together." For a fleeting moment, we connected like real sisters. She even hugged me before I left for my own room. "Thanks, Caitlin," she said. "I'm glad you're going to be there tomorrow." I went to bed that night feeling hopeful. Maybe the wedding would mark a new chapter in our relationship. Maybe once Emma was securely married, her insecurities about me would fade. I fell asleep making mental promises to continue supporting her, to keep being the bigger person, to never give up on our sisterhood. I had no idea that while I dreamed of reconciliation, my parents were plotting my humiliation. The sensation of something brushing against my face woke me up. Still half asleep, I reached up to brush it away and felt something soft fall across my hand. I opened my eyes to see a long lock of blonde hair, my hair lying on my pillow. Confused, I sat up quickly and more hair fell from my shoulders. That's when I saw my mother standing at the foot of my bed, scissors in hand, a pile of golden hair at her feet. My hands flew to my head in horror, feeling the uneven patches where my long hair had been hacked away, some areas cut so close to the scalp I could feel skin. "Mom?" My voice came out as a strangled whisper. "What did you do?" "What needed to be done," she replied calmly, as if cutting off her sleeping daughter's hair was perfectly rational. "This is justice for Emma. She deserves to shine on her wedding day." I couldn't process what was happening. I scrambled out of bed and rushed to the mirror on my dresser. The reflection staring back was unrecognizable. My hair, the long blonde waves I'd grown and cared for since childhood, was destroyed, chopped in jagged, uneven patches, with some areas nearly bald and others hanging in awkward clumps. "Why?" I gasped, tears streaming down my face. "Why would you do this to me?" My father appeared in the doorway then, taking in the scene with cold eyes. "Now maybe someone will finally pity you instead of envying you," he said flatly. "Emma deserves to be the center of attention tomorrow, not you." The betrayal was so profound, so unexpected that I couldn't form words. These were my parents, the people who were supposed to love and protect me. And they had violated me while I slept, all to appease Emma's insecurities. I ran to the bathroom and locked the door, sliding down against it as sobs racked my body. In the harsh bathroom lighting, the damage looked even worse. My scalp was visible in several places where the scissors had cut too close. There were nicks where the skin had been cut. One side was dramatically shorter than the other. It wasn't just a bad haircut, it was a deliberate mutilation. My hands shaking, I reached for my phone to call my friend Lauren, only to discover it missing. When I pounded on the bathroom door demanding my phone, my mother calmly informed me they had put it somewhere safe until after the wedding. "You're not calling anyone," she said through the door. "You're not going to ruin this for Emma with your drama." "Drama?" I screamed. "You cut off my hair while I was sleeping." "It'll grow back," she dismissed. "Stop being so vain." I stayed locked in that bathroom for hours, alternating between sobbing and sitting in numb shock. Around noon, there was a soft knock at the door. "Caitlin." It was Emma. "Can I come in?" I unlocked the door, partly hoping my sister would be horrified by what our parents had done. Instead, after an initial gasp of shock, I watched as her expression shifted to something like satisfaction. "Oh my God," she said, her hand covering her mouth unconvincingly. "What happened to your hair?" "Ask Mom," I said bitterly. "She did this while I was sleeping." Emma's eyes darted away guiltily. "Well, that was extreme. But maybe it's for the best? You always get so much attention for your hair." In that moment, I knew she had known. Maybe not the exact plan, but she had known something would be done to ensure I didn't outshine her. "I'm not coming to your wedding," I stated flatly. "Find another bridesmaid." Emma's fake sympathy vanished instantly. "You absolutely are coming. If you don't, Mom and Dad will cut you off completely. No more help with your apartment rent. No more family connections for your job, nothing. You'll be completely on your own." The threat was clear, though I was financially independent. My parents had co-signed my apartment lease in the expensive city where I worked. They could make my life very difficult if they chose to. "You're my sister," I whispered. "How could you let them do this to me?" "It's just hair," she replied coldly. "Stop being so dramatic. The wedding is tomorrow and you will be there, looking exactly how Mom planned." End of discussion. When she left, I frantically searched for ways to salvage the disaster on my head. Maybe a hat? A scarf? But when I emerged from the bathroom hours later, I discovered my mother had thought of that too. My suitcase had been emptied, all scarves, hats, and hair accessories mysteriously missing. "We've scheduled an emergency appointment with the wedding hairstylist tomorrow," my mother informed me over dinner, which I was forced to attend despite my red, swollen eyes. "She thinks she can even it out into a very short pixie cut." My father didn't even look at me during the meal. Emma alternated between fake concern when our relatives called to check on wedding preparations and smug little smiles thrown my way when no one was looking. That night, Locked in my childhood bedroom, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The initial shock had worn off, replaced by a cold, clear anger unlike anything I'd ever experienced. For years, I had made myself smaller to accommodate my sister's insecurities. I had accepted the role of family scapegoat, believing that eventually my patience and understanding would be rewarded with acceptance. But this violation had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. As I fingered the jagged remains of my once beautiful hair, something hardened inside me. The dutiful, accommodating daughter died that night, replaced by someone who finally understood that some betrayals cannot and should not be forgiven. Morning arrived with a pounding on my door at 6 a.m. Up and at 'em. My mother's voice was cheerful, as if yesterday had never happened. "We've got a bride to prepare." The hairstylist, Marina, arrived at 7 a.m. and gasped when she saw me. "What happened?" she asked, genuine horror in her eyes. "Family haircut emergency," my mother replied smoothly before I could speak. "Caitlin had a little accident with some gum and tried to cut it out herself. Teenage-style impulsiveness, you know? We need you to work your magic." I sat silently as Marina did her best, watching more of my hair fall to the floor as she tried to create something symmetrical from the chaos. The end result was an extremely short pixie cut that left my ears and neck exposed. I looked completely different, vulnerable and exposed in a way that made me feel naked. "I'm so sorry," Marina whispered when my mother stepped out to check on Emma. "I did the best I could." "It's not your fault," I replied, meeting her eyes in the mirror. "But could you do me a favor? If anyone asks, please tell them the truth, that I didn't do this to myself." She nodded slightly, a silent acknowledgement of the wrongness she sensed but couldn't fully understand. Getting into the bridesmaid dress was another humiliation. The size too large lavender monstrosity hung off my frame, making me look even more diminished with my new haircut. When the makeup artist tried to create a glamorous look to compensate, my mother intervened. No, much more natural for Caitlin," she insisted. "Just some light powder and maybe a touch of lip balm. We don't want to overdo it." By the time we arrived at the church, I looked like a pale, shorn, drowning in fabric version of myself. The other bridesmaids gasped when they saw me, their shock impossible to hide. "What happened to your hair?" Brianna, Emma's college roommate, exclaimed. Before I could answer, Emma swooped in, resplendent in her designer wedding gown. "Poor Caitlin had a meltdown last night," she stage whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. "She cut it herself. We think she's been under a lot of stress lately." "Please don't mention it. We're all trying to be supportive." The look she gave me dared me to contradict her. With our parents hovering nearby, I remained silent, the humiliation burning through me like acid. The ceremony was a blur. I mechanically followed the instructions, walked down the aisle holding my bouquet, stood beside the other bridesmaids, and played my assigned role. Throughout it all, I could feel the stares and whispers. The church was filled with people who had known me my whole life, all of them shocked by my transformation. It was during the photo session that I hit rock bottom. The photographer, a friend of Jackson's family, kept trying to position me in the back row or behind other bridesmaids. "Maybe Caitlin could sit for this one," he suggested diplomatically, with the others standing behind. Actually, my mother interjected, "Why don't we do a few without Caitlin? Just to have options." I stood aside, watching as they took photo after photo without me, only including me in the shots where I was least visible. Through it all, Emma beamed, more confident and radiant with each picture where she wasn't standing next to her normally pretty sister. During the reception, I overheard countless variations of the story my family was spreading. "Yes, poor thing had some kind of episode," my mother told my great-aunt. "We're very concerned about her stability. Always been the attention seeker." My father confided to his business partner. Couldn't stand that it wasn't about her for once. Even Emma, while accepting congratulations from college friends, managed to work it in. "Thank you. Yes, it's been a challenging week with family drama. My sister's having some issues. We're supporting her through this difficult time." The only person who showed me genuine kindness was Mark, Jackson's brother and best man. He sat beside me at the otherwise empty table where I'd been placed, far from the main wedding party. "You didn't do this to yourself, did you?" he asked quietly. The simple question, the first acknowledgement of the truth all day, nearly broke me. I shook my head slightly, not trusting myself to speak without crying. "I thought not," he said. "For what it's worth, you still look beautiful. Different, but beautiful." His kindness was almost harder to bear than the cruelty. I excused myself before the tears could start again. In the bathroom, I splashed cold water on my face and stared at my reflection. The person looking back was a stranger, vulnerable, exposed, diminished. But as I stood there, something shifted in my eyes. The helpless victim began to fade, replaced by something harder. Something unbreakable. I returned to the reception just as my father was giving his toast. I stood in the back, listening as he praised Emma effusively. "Emma has always been our shining star," he said, glass raised. "The daughter who made us proud with her intelligence, her determination, and her good judgment." The crowd awed appreciatively. "Some children," he continued, with a pointed glance in my direction, "seek attention through their looks or drama. But Emma has substance. Real value. Jackson, you've chosen a woman of quality. Not just beauty that fades or can be cut away." The thinly veiled reference drew uncomfortable laughter from guests who sensed the edge but didn't understand its cruelty. In that moment, watching my father publicly celebrate his preferred daughter while taking a dig at me after what they'd done, something crystallized inside me. This family would never change. The roles were too deeply entrenched. I would always be the scapegoat, the one to be diminished so Emma could feel superior. My parents would always enable and encourage this dynamic. No amount of forgiveness or understanding on my part would ever change that fundamental truth. As this realization washed over me, I felt a strange calm replace the hurt and humiliation. I understood with perfect clarity that I owed these people nothing, not my presence, not my forgiveness, and certainly not my continued submission to their abuse. Most importantly, I realized they deserved consequences for what they had done. Real, lasting consequences that they couldn't smooth over with lies or social manipulation. As I watched Emma and Jackson cut their cake, surrounded by adoring family and friends, a plan began to form in my mind. They thought cutting my hair had neutralized me, made me small and powerless. They had no idea what they had actually done. They had created someone with nothing left to lose. The realization that I no longer cared about preserving my relationship with my family was surprisingly liberating. For years, I had walked on eggshells, hoping that if I was accommodating enough, patient enough, loving enough, they would eventually reciprocate. That delusion had been cut away along with my hair. I watched the reception with new eyes, cataloging opportunities instead of nursing wounds. Emma and Jackson would be spending their wedding night in the bridal suite of the Grand Palmer Hotel before flying to Bali the next morning for their 2-week honeymoon. All their gifts and luggage were being managed by the wedding coordinator, Sarah, who had a master key to all the wedding-related rooms. Mark found me again during the dancing portion of the reception. "How are you holding up?" he asked, genuine concern in his eyes. "Actually, I could use some help," I said, making a quick decision to trust him. "I need to run an errand, but I don't have my phone or car keys. My parents took them." His eyebrows shot up. "They took your phone? That's controlling." "You have no idea," I replied. "Would you be willing to help me? I just need to pick up a few things." To my relief, he agreed without pressing for details. "I can slip out for about 30 minutes without anyone noticing. Will that work?" It was perfect. During the father-daughter dance, Mark and I slipped out to his car. He drove me to a 24-hour pharmacy where I purchased what I needed: a bottle of clear, colorless liquid itching powder solution, a sewing kit, and some other supplies. "Are you going to tell me what this is for?" he asked as we drove back. "Probably better if I don't," I replied honestly. "But I promise no one will be physically harmed." He nodded slowly. "Whatever happened with your hair, that wasn't an accident or something you did, was it?" "No," I said simply. "My mother cut it while I was sleeping, to make sure I wouldn't look prettier than Emma at the wedding." His hands tightened on the steering wheel. That's fucked up. I'm sorry. Don't be. It opened my eyes to some truths I've been avoiding for years. Back at the reception, Mark helped me re-enter without drawing attention. As we parted ways, he pressed something into my hand, his business card with his personal cell number written on the back. If you need anything, a friend, a listening ear, whatever, call me, he said. And Caitlin? Whatever you're planning, make it count. With Mark's unexpected allyship boosting my confidence, I put my plan into motion. First, I needed access to the bridal suite. During the bouquet toss, which Emma made sure I was excluded from, I approached Sarah, the wedding coordinator. Emma asked me to add a few special touches to the bridal suite. I lied smoothly. A surprise for Jackson. Oh, that's so thoughtful. Sarah gushed. I can let you in for a few minutes. Actually, she wanted it to be a surprise for everyone, I continued. You know how Emma loves to be the only one who gets credit for thoughtful gestures. I gave a knowing look that suggested this was a familiar family dynamic. Sarah nodded in understanding. Here's my master key. Just return it within 20 minutes, and I'll pretend I never saw you. With key in hand, I slipped away to the bridal suite. Inside, I worked quickly and methodically. First, I located Emma's wedding night lingerie laid out on the bed. Using the colorless itching powder solution, I treated the delicate fabric thoroughly, paying special attention to the most sensitive areas. The solution would dry completely clear, with no residue or scent, but would activate with body heat. Next, I located their honeymoon luggage. I treated select items of clothing, swimsuits, underwear, and a few shirts with the same solution. I also found their honeymoon travel folder containing their first-class tickets to Bali. I carefully photographed the original tickets, then replaced them with nearly identical counterfeits I would create later, changing only the flight time to 3 hours later than their actual departure. In Emma's toiletry bag, I found her special wedding makeup kit. I left most items untouched, but swapped her waterproof mascara for a non-waterproof version of the same brand. Bali's humidity would ensure raccoon eyes in every honeymoon photo. While in the suite, I also took photos of the room setup and key details I would need later. I placed a tiny, unnoticeable wireless camera in the corner of the room, angled to capture the bed area but not intimate enough to be truly invasive. I wasn't interested in violating their privacy completely, just enough to document the chaos that would ensue when the itching powder activated. I returned the key to Sarah exactly 19 minutes after borrowing it, thanking her for her help with Emma's surprise. She winked conspiratorially, never suspecting she had aided in something beyond a sisterly wedding gift. The second phase of my plan required digital access. Fortunately, Emma had always been careless with her passwords, often using variations of her birthday or our childhood pet's name. During a bathroom break, I borrowed a bridesmaid's phone to check the time and quickly accessed Emma's cloud storage using her predictable password pattern. There, I found all the professional photos that had already been uploaded from earlier in the day. I downloaded several key ones, particularly those featuring Emma in her wedding dress looking radiant. These would be useful later. I also noted her social media logins and email access information for Phase 3, which would be executed after I left the wedding. By the time the reception was winding down, my preparations were complete. I had laid the groundwork for a revenge that would unfold gradually over the next several days, each element timed to maximize impact while ensuring nothing could be definitively traced back to me. As Emma and Jackson prepared to leave for their wedding night, showered with rose petals and well wishes, I stood in the background watching with a calm smile. My mother caught my eye, clearly suspicious of my improved mood. I hope you're not planning to make a scene, she hissed as she passed me. Wouldn't dream of it, I replied truthfully. I've accepted things exactly as they are. She seemed unsettled by my serenity, but was quickly distracted by the departure preparations. I didn't bother saying goodbye to any of them, Emma, my parents, or the extended family who had witnessed my humiliation without intervention. They didn't deserve closure. Instead, I silently left the venue and took a taxi to a hotel I had booked using the bridesmaid's phone. There, in the privacy of my room, I completed the digital portion of my revenge plan. First, I created the counterfeit plane tickets, perfectly matching the originals, but with the later departure time. These I emailed to the hotel's business center to be printed and delivered to the bridal suite with a congratulatory note from the wedding party. Next, I accessed Emma's social media accounts and scheduled several posts to go live during their honeymoon. Nothing overtly malicious, just unflattering photos and awkwardly worded captions that would make her look slightly ridiculous to her carefully curated following. I also sent a carefully worded anonymous email to Emma's workplace with concerns about discrepancies in her resume, attaching documentation from her college showing her actual graduation date and GPA differed from what she had claimed. It was subtle enough to create an investigation, but not serious enough to definitively cost her job. Finally, I edited together a short video compilation using audio recorded on my bridesmaid's borrowed phone throughout the day, snippets of my parents and Emma discussing the haircutting incident, admitting it was deliberate and laughing about my humiliation. This I saved for potential future use, depending on how the initial phases of my revenge played out. As I completed these tasks, I felt a growing sense of power and autonomy. For the first time in my life, I wasn't passively accepting my family's treatment. I was taking control of my own narrative. The prospect of Emma and Jackson's honeymoon being derailed by itching, missed flights, social media embarrassment, and professional scrutiny filled me not with guilt, but with a sense of justice. They had violated me physically and emotionally, thinking I would simply absorb the abuse as I always had. They had no idea that in cutting my hair, they had also cut away the last threads of loyalty and submission that had bound me to them. They thought they had ensured Emma would shine on her wedding day by diminishing me. Instead, they had created the architect of their own social downfall. And unlike them, I had made sure my revenge would be impossible to trace directly back to me. There would be no concrete evidence. Only a series of unfortunate coincidences that would cast a shadow over Emma's perfect wedding and honeymoon. As I fell asleep that night in my anonymous hotel room, I felt lighter than I had in years. Tomorrow would bring the beginning of consequences for my family and the beginning of freedom for me. The first indications that my plan was working came at 2:37 a.m. when my burner email account received an automated alert from the hidden camera in the bridal suite. I watched with vindictive satisfaction as Emma frantically scratched at her skin, her romantic wedding night transforming into an itchy nightmare. Jackson soon followed suit, both of them examining the lingerie and bedsheets in confusion. "It burns," Emma wailed, her perfect bridal makeup now streaked with tears. "Something's wrong with these sheets." They called hotel management, demanding new bedding and a room change in the middle of the night. I could only imagine the scene. The entitled bride in her itching lingerie, the confused groom, the bewildered night manager. By the time new accommodations were arranged, their romantic wedding night was thoroughly ruined. I slept soundly for the first time in days. The next morning brought a flurry of panicked messages from Emma to her bridesmaids group chat, which I monitored through the account access I still had on the borrowed phone. Their flight to Bali was scheduled for 10 a.m., but thanks to my switched tickets, they wouldn't discover the problem until they attempted to check in. "Emergency," Emma texted at 8:43 a.m. "Our tickets are wrong. Airport says they're for 1 p.m., but the confirmation email says 10 a.m. I'm freaking out. The cascade of problems continued throughout the day. When they finally boarded their later flight, they discovered their luggage had gone on the original plane and would be sitting unattended in Bali for hours. Emma's social media accounts began posting the unflattering wedding photos I had scheduled, showing her double chin in one, a weird facial expression in another. All with captions that sounded just enough like her to be believable, but were subtly self-absorbed and ridiculous. Feeling like literally the most beautiful bride in history today. Sorry to all other brides who could never. Her friends were commenting with confusion, some privately messaging her to ask if she was okay or if her account had been hacked. By the time Emma realized what was happening, the posts had been live for hours, seen by hundreds of her followers. Meanwhile, back home, the fallout from the wedding was spreading in ways I hadn't directly orchestrated, but had hoped would occur. Marina, the hairstylist, had indeed told several people the truth about my hair, expressing her horror at what my mother had done. This sparked whispers throughout our social circle, with many reaching out to me directly once I reactivated my regular phone. "Is it true what they did to you?" texted my cousin Rachel. "That's seriously messed up." "I always knew Aunt Diane favored Emma, but this is another level," wrote my cousin Jason. Even my mother's best friend Linda sent a tentative message. "I've known your mother for 30 years and I'm shocked. Are you okay, honey?" I responded selectively, neither confirming nor denying the rumors, which only fueled more speculation. The video compilation I had created remained unused in my back pocket, a nuclear option if needed. 3 days into Emma and Jackson's honeymoon, the itching powder I had applied to select clothing items continued to cause problems. Emma's frantic messages to her bridesmaids detailed mysterious rashes, emergency pharmacy runs, and ruined excursions. The carefully staged Instagram photos she managed to post between my scheduled ones showed strained smiles and red, irritated skin poorly concealed with filters. A week into their trip, I received an unexpected call from Mark. "I don't know exactly what you did," he said without preamble, but Jackson just called his parents, freaking out about everything going wrong. Emma's having a complete meltdown because her work called about discrepancies in her employment history. I smiled to myself. The anonymous tip had hit its mark. "That sounds stressful." I replied neutrally. "Honeymoons can be so unpredictable." There was a pause. "You're something else, Caitlin," he finally said, but his tone was admiring rather than accusatory. "Listen, I'm back in the city next week. Would you want to grab coffee? No wedding talk, I promise." The invitation surprised me, but not unpleasantly. "I'd like that," I replied. My parents began calling incessantly around day 10 of the honeymoon, leaving increasingly desperate voicemails. "Caitlin, we need to talk about these rumors going around," my father's tight voice demanded. "People are saying very inappropriate things about our family. Sweetheart, whatever misunderstanding has occurred, we need to present a united front." My mother's falsely sweet message insisted. Family loyalty is everything. I ignored them all, focusing instead on rebuilding my life. I had moved out of my apartment and into a new place, using the savings I'd been quietly accumulating for years. I'd taken a week off work to process everything and was considering a job offer in another city, away from my family's sphere of influence. The most satisfying moment came when Emma and Jackson returned from their honeymoon. Instead of the glowing, relaxed newlyweds they had expected to be, they arrived home exhausted, irritated, and sporting lingering rashes. Emma's carefully cultivated social media image had been tarnished by the posts I had scheduled, and her workplace investigation was still ongoing. "This was supposed to be the happiest time of my life," she sobbed to our cousin Amanda, who later relayed the conversation to me. "Everything went wrong. My lingerie gave me a rash. We missed our original flight. Our luggage was sitting in the Bali airport for hours, and someone stole my favorite shoes. My Instagram was posting things I didn't write. And now my boss is questioning my credentials." "That's a lot of bad luck," Amanda had replied carefully. "It's not bad luck," Emma had snapped. "It's like someone deliberately sabotaged everything." But she had no proof, no way to connect the dots back to me. I had been careful to ensure each element of my revenge could be explained by mundane mishaps. Itching powder could be an allergic reaction to detergent. Ticket time confusion could be a booking error. Social media glitches happened all the time. And if Emma had indeed misrepresented her credentials, that was hardly anyone else's fault. A month after the wedding, I met my parents for coffee at a neutral location, a busy cafe where they couldn't make a scene. They looked haggard, aged by the social fallout from their actions. "We need to clear the air," my father began without preamble. "These rumors about what happened with your hair are damaging our reputation." "What rumors?" I asked innocently. "That you cut off my hair while I was sleeping to make sure I wouldn't look better than Emma at her wedding?" "That's not a rumor, Dad. That's what happened." "It wasn't like that," my mother insisted, though her eyes darted away guiltily. "We were trying to help you. You've always hidden behind your looks, and we thought Save it, I interrupted calmly. I'm not here to listen to your justifications. I'm here to tell you that I'm moving to Seattle for a new job opportunity. I won't be available for family gatherings going forward. You can't just cut us off, my father blustered. We're your parents. Watch me, I replied, standing up. By the way, I have recordings of both of you admitting what you did to my hair and laughing about it. If you ever try to contact me again or spread lies about me, those recordings will find their way to everyone we know. It was a calculated risk. I did have audio, but it wasn't as damning as I implied. Their faces paled. The threat worked. You wouldn't. My mother whispered. Try me, I challenged. You created this version of me when you violated me in my sleep. Live with the consequences. I walked out of that cafe feeling truly free for the first time in my life. The family that had diminished me for years now had no power over me. My revenge had not only given me satisfaction, but had severed the unhealthy bonds that had kept me tethered to their toxic dynamic. Emma eventually texted me a single message, I know it was you. I can't prove it, but I know. I never responded. She didn't deserve even that much acknowledgement. Instead, I focused on building my new life, one where I was valued for my whole self, not diminished for shining too brightly. And, surprisingly, that new life included Mark, whose coffee invitation turned into dinner, which turned into regular dating. I knew you were special the moment I saw how you handled that wedding situation, he told me months later. Anyone who could endure what your family did and emerge stronger has a kind of resilience that's rare. It was strange to be appreciated for the very qualities my family had tried to break. But as my hair grew back, now in a stylish bob that suited me better than my long waves ever had, I realized that in trying to cut me down, my family had inadvertently forced me to grow in ways I never would have otherwise. Their betrayal had set me free. 6 months after what I now refer to as the wedding incident, my life had transformed in ways I never could have imagined. My hair had grown into a chic, sophisticated bob that framed my face perfectly, a style I might never have tried if not forced by circumstance. What had begun as a violation had, ironically, led to a physical transformation that better suited the new me, stronger, more confident, less willing to dim my light for others' comfort. I had moved to Seattle, accepted that exciting job opportunity, and was thriving in a workplace that valued my contributions rather than seeing them as threats. My apartment overlooked Puget Sound, and each morning I would sip coffee on my small balcony, watching ferries cross the water and marveling at how peaceful life could be without constant family drama. My relationship with Mark had blossomed into something I hadn't known was possible. Unlike my family, he celebrated my successes and supported me through challenges without competition or manipulation. When I received a promotion just 4 months into my new job, he brought champagne and made dinner. Genuinely proud of my achievement. You know what I love about you, he said that night as we toasted my success. You went through something that would have broken most people. And instead of letting it define you as a victim, you used it as a catalyst to build a better life. His perspective helped me process what had happened in healthier ways. Though my revenge had been satisfying in the moment, the true victory wasn't in the chaos I'd created for Emma's honeymoon or the social consequences my parents faced. The victory was in reclaiming my power and refusing to remain in relationships that required my diminishment. I maintained limited, carefully boundaried contact with extended family members who had reached out with genuine concern after the wedding. My cousin Rachel visited Seattle for a weekend, and we had honest conversations about the family dynamics we'd both observed but never previously acknowledged. I always thought your parents were so hard on you, she admitted over dinner. But I never said anything because, well, they're the adults, right? I figured they must know what they were doing. That's how abusive dynamics perpetuate, I replied, using language I'd learned in therapy. Everyone watches, but no one intervenes because they assume there must be a justification they're not seeing. My parents and Emma made sporadic attempts to reestablish contact, though never with genuine accountability. My mother sent a Christmas card with a gift certificate for a hair salon, her idea of an apology that completely missed the point. My father left voicemails about family obligations and moving forward without ever acknowledging what they had done. Emma occasionally sent texts that vacillated between accusatory, "You ruined my honeymoon," and falsely conciliatory, "We should try to be sisters again." I responded to none of them. The distance and silence were not punishments, but boundaries, necessary protections for my healing process. That healing journey was complex and nonlinear. I worked with a therapist specializing in family trauma, unpacking not just the wedding incident, but the years of subtle diminishment that had preceded it. I discovered that much of my self-worth had been tied to external validation, particularly around my appearance, which my family had simultaneously prized and punished me for. "They weaponized your beauty against you," my therapist observed. "They taught you it was both your greatest asset and your greatest character flaw." This insight helped me develop a healthier relationship with my appearance. I began to see my looks as just one aspect of my identity rather than its defining feature or greatest liability. I took pleasure in dressing well and doing my hair, but I no longer feared outshining others or apologized for my natural attributes. One of the most healing experiences came through an unexpected channel. After sharing parts of my story in an online support forum for people with toxic family relationships, I received dozens of messages from others with similar experiences. Their stories of family betrayal, scapegoating, and the difficult journey toward healing resonated deeply with me. Inspired by this connection, I started a small support group in Seattle for people navigating toxic family dynamics. Our monthly meetings became sacred spaces where wounds could be acknowledged, boundaries celebrated, and healing journeys honored without judgment. "You turned your pain into purpose," Mark observed after I told him about a particularly powerful group session. "That's the difference between mere revenge and true justice." His words stuck with me. While my wedding revenge had given me temporary satisfaction, the real transformation came from building something constructive from the rubble of those relationships. My group members weren't interested in getting even with their toxic families. They wanted to get free and help others do the same. As the one-year anniversary of the wedding approached, I received a lengthy email from my mother. Unlike her previous attempts at contact, this one contained something resembling accountability. "I've been seeing a counselor at church," she wrote. "She's helping me understand that what we did to you is wrong. I won't make excuses." At the time, I genuinely believed I was balancing some cosmic scale by making you less beautiful for Emma's day. I see now how twisted that thinking was. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know I recognize the harm I caused. I read the email several times, searching for the manipulative angle, the hidden guilt trip, or demand. Finding none. I allowed myself to feel the complex emotions it triggered: vindication, lingering anger, cautious hope, and deep sadness for the mother-daughter relationship we might have had in a healthier family system. After careful consideration, I replied with a single sentence: "Thank you for acknowledging the harm. It's a first step." I didn't offer forgiveness or a restored relationship, but I left the door cracked open for the possibility of healing if genuine change occurred. It was the most I could honestly give. My father never reached similar awareness, and Emma remained convinced she had been the victim of my jealousy rather than the beneficiary of their cruelty. Some relationships cannot be saved, and that knowledge no longer devastated me. Instead, I focused on the family I was building by choice, friends who celebrated rather than competed with me, a partner who saw all of me and loved what he saw, and a community of fellow survivors who understood the journey from trauma to healing. Mark proposed on a rainy Seattle evening 18 months after we met, presenting a ring that had belonged to his grandmother. "You taught me what courage looks like," he said as he knelt before me. "I want to spend my life with someone who knows how to love fiercely and live authentically, even when it's hard." I said yes through tears of joy, marveling at how my worst day had eventually led to my best ones. When we discussed wedding plans, there was no question about whether my biological family would be invited. Their absence wasn't punitive but protective of the sacred joy we were creating together and the healthy future we were building. Family is who treats you like family. I told Mark as we finalized our small guest list of genuine supporters. I learned that the hard way. The night before our intimate ceremony, I stood before the mirror, running my fingers through my hair, now grown into a stylish shoulder-length cut that I loved. I barely recognized the woman who had once allowed herself to be diminished to make others comfortable. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who understood her worth, wasn't determined by others' ability to celebrate it. Looking back at the journey from that horrific morning before Emma's wedding to this peaceful evening before my own, I realized the greatest revenge hadn't been in the chaos I'd created for them, but in the peace I'd created for myself. They had tried to cut away my power, never realizing they were actually setting me free. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that ultimately led to positive change in your life? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If my journey resonated with you, please subscribe to hear more about navigating difficult family dynamics and building a life of authentic joy. Thank you for listening to my story. May it remind you that sometimes our deepest wounds become our greatest sources of strength and wisdom. Like, share, and remember, family should lift you up, not cut you down.